Welcome to the Cutmaker podcast YouTube channel. My name is Jeff Seeley, aka Cutmaker Jeff. I have two special guests this week to launch our YouTube channel, but thanks for joining us. We're going to go a little bit on DFS 101 this week from a PGA perspective. We'll talk about some bets, but I have two friends of mine here who are avid golfers, avid golf fans, and are 1-for-1. They have 100% winning percentage in the DFS this week, having just started last week. So I'll introduce my guests here. One of these gentlemen is friends with about half of the Georgia players playing this week and knows these guys, so will be really insightful then. I know the other gentleman here is very insightful if you want to know what it's like to play golf with Pac-Man Jones. So we'll introduce these guys. Drew, Clint, thanks for joining us, guys. Again, we'll get into a little bit about the DFS 101, but Drew, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about you and a little about your experience with golf and how you got into golf betting in general.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. Great to be on with you. I'm Drew Butler. I played football at University of Georgia, then I was in the NFL as well with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Arizona Cardinals. And I've loved golf my whole life. Since I've been done playing, I've kind of gotten into the media game a little bit. I host a popular college football podcast called Punt and Pass. I do some other stuff as well in the digital realm. I host a series called Bet Online All Access. And I also am on the radio here in Atlanta, Georgia. I've known Clint Boling since about 10th grade. We were roommates all through college, and Clint played a lot longer than I did in the NFL. But we've always kept in touch, not only since he's been done playing. We play golf together back here in Atlanta, and we just love the casual sports betting. So we do Circa Sports Million. We've done that for 3 years straight. We've recently gotten into golf handicapping quite a bit, and we've always listened to Jeff on Follow the Money on VSiN. Clint got to meet Jeff about a month and a half ago in Hilton Head. We've kind of struck up this relationship, so we're happy to be here, diving into some DFS, and I got to give Clint some credit. Last week, with about 9 holes left in the Byron Nelson, he was sitting in second place, looking at a $5,000 cash out, but it was really exciting, and we're looking forward to PGA Championship weekend.
Yeah, so I met Jeff. I'll rewind back. So like Drew said, we were roommates at Georgia. I ended up playing with the Bengals for about 8 years, retired in 2019. And one of the first things I did when I got done was to go find a bookie, start gambling a little bit. And this is one of those things I couldn't do when I was playing, but always had an interest in it. And I started listening to Follow the Money, and that's how I originally got. Jeff came on for a couple segments, started pumping out some golf picks, started following him on Twitter. Long story short, we linked up. I saw Jeff send out a tweet a couple months ago about how he was going to be in Hilton Head. I spent a good bit of time in Hilton Head with my family. So we linked up had a couple beers and just talk golf betting for a while. So he started getting us into the daily fantasy sports. Last week was our first go round, and I was able to cash. Got pretty interesting for a little while. Jeff cashed. We both got to finish in front of Jeff, but it was a good first run. I don't think they're all going to be that way though.
Yeah, I mean, tough scene for me. I get these guys in some showdowns, get these guys in DFS, and I get my ass handed to me the first week around. But yeah, guys, I think it's a lot of fun, and we'll talk a little bit about this because a lot of people, you guys know this from what we do at the Cutmaker website is, I send out plays every round of every tournament. So a lot of matchups have been our bread and butter, done really, really well for us this year. But we also do post a lot of DFS information for folks who want to play. And it can be pretty daunting, right? If you get in there and you don't know what you're doing, don't know what games to select and so on. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Talking about tools people use to build lineups and so on. And Clint was asking me about this. I think a lot of people start with data golf, and data golf is probably the preeminent, I would say, sports betting tool people use. It has a ton of good information on top 10s, top 20s, various odds of different things. But when you're from a DFS perspective, that if that's the common thing that everybody uses, then you want to try to be a little bit different, right? If you know that everybody's going to be going one direction, you want to try to look at some others. And I was just talking about that very thing. So if we look this week, for example, at data golf's, say, odds to win, they have Scotty Scheffler at 13% to win this week. Scotty's probably going to be a pretty popular DFS play. And the model that I ran, Scotty's not a guy that I'm going to play. And there's some other folks we'll talk about, but you can find leverage. It's just a really good way to find leverage if you build some of your own models, find some guys you like better, and then use data golf as a way to figure out, okay, where is it likely that the masses are going to be? I think that's a really fun way to do it. So we'll get into DFS a little bit here, guys. We're going to kind of go down through the rankings of, $10,000 range, $9,000 range, and so on. And we'll talk a little bit as we go through these rankings of what makes these people valuable, what makes them good, what makes them good for DFS, what makes them good DFS plays, and what some people who are better bets than they are DFS plays. That is a common theme. So, guys, with that, let's talk a little about this. You guys have had a chance to look at some of the salaries and so on. Clint, I'll start with you this week. As you look at guys over $10,000, out to you that you can't play all of them, right? So if you're only going to play one guy over $10,000 this week, who are you looking to play?
I know it's going to be a lame pick, but to me, John Rahm. I know you're going to be all over Koepka, like you said with Scheffler. I like Rahm in that spot. Rory's not a guy that I'm going to probably get behind for a variety of reasons. But when I look at that, those 5-6 guys that are up there, I think it's either going to be a Scheffler or Rahm play when you jump up there. And for me, it's going to be Rahm again. Guy's playing some unreal golf. He's an unbelievable putter, and he grinds. He works hard, and so that's where I'm going to be at for probably with that in that range.
Drew, is Rahm a guy you're going to lock into, or are you going to look to go someplace else?
Major championship weeks, I more so kind of fade away from the public perception, which of course everybody's going to be on Rahm, and why wouldn't you? Like Clint said about Rory, his mental makeup right now is just something that I'm not really gravitating towards. I was watching live from last night on the Golf Channel. Clint, I don't know if you heard this or not, but his wife's entire family is from Rochester, and Rory's a member at Oak Hill. I didn't even know that. So that made me think twice a little bit, but I got to go with Koepka. Above the $10,000 range, what he did at the Masters, in form on Live, I feel like those Live guys are just overlooked heading into these major championships now. I was on the wrong Live guy heading into the Masters. I was all about Dustin Johnson. I'm not going to skip out on BK this week. So if I had to go with somebody over the $10,000 salary range, I'm going to go with Koepka.
You're a smart man, Drew. You're a smart man. And I think one of the hard parts, guys, that we were just talking before we started the pod is for most people, when they run a model, it doesn't include Live stats, right? Or it doesn't include European Tour stats. So I think a lot of models are going to discount guys. Look, John Rahm's a terrific play, popular play for good reason. It will be really interesting to see, though, guys, how the ownership is split between Rahm and Scheffler. Because they're so close in price, I actually think if you're going to play, now that I'm saying this out loud, I think if you're going to play in DFS, you're going to play one. I think Scheffler's probably a better play. I think that he will probably come in at probably half the ownership of Rahm. I bet Rahm will be 20-some% owned and Scheffler probably 10, just because they're so close in price. I think Koepka will be popular for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I don't know how popular Rory's going to be. It's really interesting. Yeah, Drew, you mentioned the Oak Hill being a member. Apparently he played there a ton during COVID because they were staying up there with her family. So he played. Yeah. They made him an honorary member. He played a lot there during COVID. And that's the thing. It's the balance of that narrative versus he's just, where is he at right now with his game, right? That's the hard part. You just don't know. And then going down in the 9K range, right? We got one guy who's, I think, going to be wildly popular this week, and Patrick Cantlay. You got a guy who's got a second, a fourth, and a 10th in Xander Schauffele. Tony Finau just won in Mexico a few weeks ago. Sungjae Im's down here in this range. That's one of Drew's favorite players. You got Jordan Spieth. You can never rule out Victor Hovland down here. Drew, who's the first guy that caught your eye in the 9K range?
Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask you, Jeff, because obviously it would benefit everybody to pick one player above that $10,000 salary range. But I like a few here. I really like Xander Schauffele in recent form. Driving's going to be at a premium. He always seems to just be there on the weekends of major championships. I love Sungjae Im as well. Sungjae is the model of consistency. I think it's only a matter of time until he breaks through. Spieth coming off that wrist injury, I'm probably going to stay away from him. But my question is, are you picking one in the 10,000 plus range and one in the 9,000 plus range? Or if you really like, say, a Cam Young, can you go one above 10,000 and two in that 9,000 range and then just try to piece something together at the end?
I think the popular build will be 110K, 19K, and then work your way down. I think a super, super sharp contrarian build, like if I'm playing $100 single entry with 5,000 people in the field, I'm going to build from 9,200 to like 7,800.
Gotcha.
And so I'm going to look at, I'm going to build a lineup with, I'm just making off the top of my head, Tony Finau, Tyrrell Hatton, Sam Burns, Max Homa. I mean, you can build a really good team.
Yeah.
Right? You look at this, you're like, God, this roster's filthy. And they're all in that 8K range. So that, I think, is a really sharp way to do it if you're trying to do really contrarian. As a matter of fact, now I'm saying this out loud, I actually think if you played the Millie Maker this week, so for like somewhere in the neighborhood of just over $3,000, you could fire 150 entries in the $25 and take a shot at $1 million, right? And I think if you actually took that, and we'll talk about model build or lineup builders and stuff in a second, but if you took a lineup builder and made a rule that you're not going to do any player over 9,500 and no player under 7,400, and you build 150 lineups in that range, you could very easily win $1 million.
Very easily win $1 million. You hear that? I love it.
Well, I mean, I just think because guys, like if one of those guys wins and a few more top 10, you're going to win all the money, right? Because you're going to have look, the likelihood of Rahm, Scheffler, Koepka, Rory all busting, all not finishing right there is low. But again, if Matt Fitzpatrick could easily win this, right? He's 8,400. And if Matt Fitzpatrick wins and Max Homa is second and Sam Burns and Tyrrell Hatton are T4, you want a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we've been trying to talk to you about, obviously, because we're a little bit new to this, is just the way you balance out your models. Obviously, you want to try to find guys that other people will not be on, like the percent owned is a big thing. But also just, learning about the scoring. That was a big question I had. I was trying to figure out why my team was going up and down. And then, the finishing position obviously factors in. So you want to kind of have guys that are going to make a bunch of birdies, but also going to be at the top ends of the leaderboard. So just trying to navigate all that was a little bit new. So it was good to talk a little bit of strategy for the first time.
Well, yeah, and I think, Clint, you hit the nail on the head. Birdies are super important, right? That's the most important thing. What a lot of people don't realize when they're looking at DFS is they're like, hey, my guy was 3 under and Clint's guy was 3 under. Well, Clint got double the points that I got. What the hell's going on? Well, if you have 9 birdies and 9 bogeys, you're going to score way more than if you have 18 pars. That's the important thing in DFS. And if you're playing what's called showdowns, where these single-day tournaments, birdies are that much more valuable. I mean, the Eagles are that much more valuable. You get bonus points for no bogeys in a round. You get bonus points for a string of 3 birdies, things like that. So it's really important to know the scoring. But the number one rule of DFS PGA is find guys who make birdies, period. Like if the only stat you look at is most birdies on the PGA Tour this year, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
You got a guy who can make birdies even if they make some bogeys, and that's obviously you would love a guy that could do both. But that's why a lot of times you'll see a guy. I'm trying to think of a guy. I'll look at this list like
Sepp Straka can fill it up. Taylor Montgomery makes tons of birdies. Those are the guys that I focused on last week. But you're right. I mean, you could tell when you were watching it because Clint and I were just checking DraftKings all weekend long. Those birdies make a huge difference. There's no question.
Well, and to that end, so let's look at 2 guys. Let's take who are similarly priced. Let's take let me look at. So here's a really good example: Taylor Moore and Adam Scott. Taylor Moore does not make a ton of birdies, right? He can make some, does not going to make a ton of birdies, makes a lot of pars, hangs around, is going to be consistent. Adam Scott is going to make a lot more birdies than Taylor Moore. Adam Scott's going to have more bogeys. Adam Scott is probably a better DFS play than Taylor Moore is. Taylor Moore is probably just as good or better bet relative to the odds. So the 2 guys, again, I when I think of a guy that was always really popular in DFS and never made a ton of birdies, I think of Matt Kuchar. Matt Kuchar was always a very popular DFS guy, and I don't know why, because he is not a good birdie scorer, makes a ton of pars. So Clint, as you were looking at the 9K range, who were the guys you were looking at? Who were the first guys jumped out to you?
There was we chatted a little bit about it yesterday about, form coming into it. And one of the guys that I'm probably going to fire on is Cam Young. I mean, the guy's just been beaten down the door at majors. He's an unbelievable ball striker. He can get hot, but he can, that's just one of the guys that I'm probably going to be targeting first. The other one that I'm going to be looking at is going to be Hovland. He's same thing. He's been on the cusp of, he's been right around all those majors. You look at those guys at the Masters, they were right there in it. Hovland's another guy that can fill it up and make a lot of birdies in a hurry. Once he gets hot, he's a good ball striker. And so for me, those two guys are probably going to be the top of the list as I'm filling out my lineup in that range.
You know what's interesting? We had Paul Tesori on our podcast a few weeks ago, actually right after we left Hilton Head there, Clint, and it was just after they had played the match play, and it was real fascinating the experience that he had on the bag, and then they went to Hilton. Sorry, they were heading to Hilton Head. Then they went to the RSM, and Cam Young couldn't putt to save his life. And then, interestingly enough, the following week, his putting was neutral. His approach was irons were terrible. So I look at Cam Young. Look, I agree. I think if he figures this out, he figures out his irons, and his putting is just average, he can absolutely win this. He has the distance. He's as good a ball striker as there is on tour. Especially, the one narrative everybody's seen this week, right, is you got to be able to carry 320. You got to be able to carry 320.
I think that's overblown, though.
Well, that's it, Drew. I don't disagree.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the 320 carry narrative is a bit overblown. The course is only 7,300 yards. It's not like it's a 7,700-yard bear where you're just going to have to pound driver every single hole. And you look at past champions of majors at Oak Hill, it's not notably long hitters. I know the course has been renovated since, but I think the premium's more so going to be put the ball in play. That rough looks pretty sticky. It's not overly tall. Look, driving accuracy, I think, is going to be more important than driving distance this week.
I don't terribly disagree. I think the most important thing, honestly, is going to be long iron play. I really do. You look at, and it's funny because, and I weighted it pretty heavily in my model, and Morikawa still sucks. But so that's for whatever that's worth. That is what it is. But honestly, like you guys, I mean, in my short-term model, looking at long-term long iron play, number one, my short-term model, Adam Scott. I mean, the number one player in my short-term model is Adam Scott this week. And again, you look, 8th at the Byron Nelson, 5th at the Wells Fargo, coming in good there. So, yeah, no, Adam Scott, I think it's super interesting. A lot of it because of his long iron play.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. When you looked at the course, from what it seems like, it's going to be a premium. Keep it in the short grass. The rough is gnarly. The bunkers are gnarly. So you're going to want to find guys that are going to be able to get around the greens, find fairways, and like you said, the long iron. So I'm not putting a huge premium on distance, but that's just that's my 2 cents as we kind of get going.
Yeah, and I think bunkers too, right? It sounds like these bunkers are going to be super difficult, super steep. So we got to make sure those are we have some around the green play. I factored that in. When I look at this 9K range, guys, you mentioned Drew Xander Schauffele. I think Xander's a terrific play every week. I think he's in play this week. I think Jason Day is just under the 9K range, is going to be wildly popular. He grades out well, but I'm going to have to take a few stands. I'm not sure if I'm going to play Jason Day or straight fade him and hope Vertigo kicks in or something. But for me, guys, the top guy in this range is Tony Finau. I'm going to be on Tony Finau. You talk about accurate driver. You talk about good long iron play. His putting's dramatically improved. I love Tony Finau in this range, and he's the first guy that jumped out to me. Drew, you mentioned Sungjae Im. I like him. I mean, Sungjae has been low key elite. Look at these last 5 finishes: 17th, 16th, 7th, 6th, 8th. And he probably top 10s again. It would not surprise me. Does he win? I don't know, but for 9,000 in DraftKings, and you get an 8th place finish out of him, that's worth it. I think Sungjae is super interesting. So as we think about some values, guys, I think this 8K range, 8K down to high 7K range is where this tournament's going to be won. I mentioned, I think you could fill a lineup up with these. Clint, who's your favorite guy in the kind of 8K to say even 8,900 down to maybe 7,500?
So I'm looking at one guy that I kind of like that I don't think a ton of people are going to be on is going to be Joaquin Niemann. Just I think he's a good ball striker. He gets off the tee well. He plays his long irons well. I think he's going to be a guy that's not hugely owned, in my opinion. He's kind of fallen by the wayside to going over to live, so you don't hear a lot about him. So that's one guy that I'm going to be looking at. And another guy, I was just looking at your models that you sent us that you don't have as highly ranked. I'm going to be curious to hear your perspective on it. But I kind of like Russell Henley this week. He's a guy that, he played well at the Masters. He finds fairways. He's going to keep it in the short grass. And, he gets around the greens well. So that's a guy that I'm going to be looking at that I think would be potentially smaller percentage owned. But those are two guys that I kind of like in that range.
Here's our dog bias kicking in here. So
yeah,
I'm looking here at Henley, and it's funny. You're right. Henley doesn't grade out well in my model, but it's interesting because you can make a good case for him, Clint. I mean, 19th, 4th, and a 17th in his last 3 events. I mean, when you think long iron play, Russell Henley is it. I'm going to have to look here at why he didn't grade it very well in my model. Drew, where are you at on Russell Henley in general?
Yeah, obviously he played amazing at the Masters, and he does stripe those long irons. He's very accurate off the tee as well. Seems like that's a guy that'll be around on the weekend. There's no question about it. I like Tyrrell Hatton. I was listening to Colt Knost yesterday. He said he followed Tyrrell in the final round of the Byron Nelson. He was like, dude, this guy was absolutely striping it. And if you look at recent form, a 5th at the Byron Nelson and a 3rd the week before that. Going down a little bit further, though, I'm kind of into the $7,000 range. I don't know if you want me to get there or we'll get there or not.
Sure.
Wyndham Clark is leading the PGA Tour in birdies, 280 birdies. That's crazy. He obviously just got his breakthrough win as well. Hopefully he got a little rest and he's ready to take it on to a major. But then another guy whose back is up against the wall, Taylor Gooch. 2 live golf wins in the past 3 tournaments. He has to play very well to get into the U.S. Open. It's an interesting pick there. I mean, the guy's going to be playing with a vengeance, and we keep mentioning it, but these live guys go under the radar. He's been playing at a super high level.
That I absolutely love. First of all, I love both those. I like the Neiman pick. I like Wyndham Clark. I like and honestly, I like Gooch. I think you hit the nail on the head. He's got a lot to play for, and he's coming in great form. Look, Gooch was a good PGA player before he went over to live. And honestly, I think he's going to be low owned. I don't know how low owned Neiman's going to be. Maybe a little bit lower than he should be, just because he is on live. But I think he's going to get some buzz around the industry. But I think we'll inflate him. But guys, you're going to get Russell Henley at 0 ownership. Nobody's going to play Russell Henley, and so I think that may end up working out for you. Yeah, I mean, the only reason I'm looking at his stuff, the only reason that he's struggled, I mean, he's struggled with his irons a little bit. The same thing goes with Russell Henley all the time. It's his putter. His putter is usually what kills him. Another guy who I think is going to be very, very popular, probably the second most popular after Wyndham Clark, is Keegan Bradley. You talk about a guy who really stripes it with his irons and has had success here, always plays well in the Northeast. I think Keegan Bradley is going to be very, very popular. Like with anything else, Keegan Bradley, you worry about his putter, right? That's very similar to Russell Henley. But and frankly, you could look at those guys as fairly similar. Keegan and Henley similar. I bet Keegan comes in at 18% ownership and Henley comes in at 5%. So I think Henley's a terrific leverage play.
What do you think about Patrick Reed?
I think he's another guy is a tremendous leverage play because we're not at Augusta, right? Number one, we're not at Augusta, so people don't want to play him. And one thing you learn about DFS, like for example, let's take Patrick Cantlay. Patrick Cantlay is going to be lower owned than he should be, just because he's the closest thing we have to a PGA villain right now. Right. I mean, so people are not going to play Patrick Cantlay. I mean, don't get me wrong. People are going to play him, but some people won't play him just because they don't like him.
I'm one of those guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to play him either. But for that matter, I mean, nobody's going to play Patrick Reed. The only time you play him is at Augusta. He doesn't grade out well in models. So I think from an ownership perspective, now, do I think he's a good bet? No, I think he's a terrible bet. Do I think he's a good leverage DFS play? Yes, I think he's terrific, Drew. That's exactly the kind of play you're looking for. And, as I look at this, we're talking about value guys and leverage plays. I think a terrific leverage play is another Georgia Bulldog. We'll talk about Brian Harmon. We're down the 6K range now, but Brian Harmon, and you guys probably know better than I can't. He always plays well and seems to play well in big tournaments. And then he always seems to play well at long courses for whatever reason. He's a good par 5 scorer. He's not a big dude. He's not a big bomber, but Brian Harmon is somebody who always seems to show up at these type of events.
He's a guy that could fill it up in a hurry. The only thing I'm concerned about is you look at where he's been finishing recently. He hasn't been playing great this year, which is kind of one of the only reasons I would be hesitant on it. I'd have to go back and look exactly out of it, but I just haven't seen him at the top of those leaderboards some this year.
Well, he finished 7th of the RBC and in April. So but again, prior to that, you're right. He missed 2 cuts. He missed 4 to 5 cuts coming in, missed a cut at Wells Fargo. His irons have just been flat out bad. I mean, really bad going back to in November where he had back-to-back runner-up finishes. So maybe he finds something, but again, grades out fairly well in long-term form. And this is a guy who nobody's going to play. Are you playing Brian Harmon, Drew?
He wouldn't be on my sheet. No, I wouldn't look towards Brian. I mean, if we were going in that range, Keith Mitchell's at 7,100.
Oh yeah,
salary, and Keith obviously is gaining in popularity for multiple reasons, but he can bomb it. I mean, his driver is one of the strong points of his game right now, and then around the greens, he has really improved in his short game. So that would be somebody that I would look at in that high 6, low 7 range for sure.
I love Keith Mitchell. I love Keith Mitchell. I think he's a terrific play. I think he's going to be popular just because for that reason. He can bomb it. He's a terrific driver. I think he's like 11th on tour in driving distance or right around there. And I think he playing with Sanjay M in the team event, I think only helped him. He helped his popularity. He's getting more and more popular. They had really funny interviews where he was teaching Sanjay football terms on the course and stuff. That was really entertaining. So no, I think Keith Mitchell is a terrific play. What do you guys, Clint? Are you going to play Ricky Fowler?
Probably not. I think you talk about guys. I think guys are going to be on him. They like him. Kind of the opposite of, like you said, Cantlay. He's a fan favorite. He's starting to play better. He's played really well this year. Kind of like Day, where he's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence. And I just think people are going to be on him. So I personally probably won't. But not to say I dislike the guy. It's just I personally probably won't be on him this week.
How about you, Drew?
I like Ricky. I like his resurgence of form. You just saw a guy in Jason Day who's kind of been on the same track as Ricky this season, break through and get a big win. In that range, though, too, a guy that we passed over who's never won, Tommy Fleetwood, man. Tommy Fleetwood is going to be around on the weekend. There's no doubt about that. DK right now, he's valued at $8,000 on the salary, and Ricky's right behind him at $7,600. So that's a guy that I would definitely look at. But if I had to pick between those two, I would pick Ricky over Tommy Fleetwood.
All right, let me ask you this, both you guys. Somebody else who's going to be wildly popular. He's a very popular player on tour. He's very affordable, and I think in the low 7s will probably be the most highly owned guy, Gary Woodland. So you got a gun to your head, Clint. Are you taking Gary Woodland or are you taking Keith Mitchell?
I would probably go with Gary Woodland. I think there's a little bit more experience there. He's won a major before. In that aspect, I'd probably take Gary Woodland with I like Keith. I think he's a good player. I'll just be curious, he's consistent. He's done well. I think those majors are just a step above, and Gary's been able to do that before. So I'd take the experience.
Well, and Drew, we just talked about this. We talked about the importance of long irons, right? And while Keith is a great driver, few people better hit long irons better than Gary Woodland. So where are you at with those two?
Yeah, I think Clint hit the nail on the head talking about Gary Woodland with the experience of being a major champion, and it was at Pebble Beach. His long iron play is elite. He can put the ball in play also. When he gets hot, man, he's streaky as well. So just from an experience standpoint alone, I'd have to go with Gary. He's not afraid of the moment. That'll be an interesting follow for sure. But one thing, too, in building these lineups, Jeff, you text on Friday leading up to the cut line, and you said, how many of y'all's players are going to make the cut? And I think Taylor Montgomery made the cut on the number, and I had all 6 guys make the cut on my DK lineup. And I woke up on Saturday, and I shot up like 400 places on the leaderboard. So if you can get those guys across the cut line, and they were all saying last night, hell, if you gave me -6 right now, I think that'd be a great score at the end of the week at Oak Hill. You're going to find a ton of value in your lineup looking for a cash out.
Drew, you absolutely hit the nail on the head, buddy. And thanks for saying that, because that's a tremendous point, right? The single most important thing the number 2 thing, birdies are the most important. The number 2 thing is getting 6 out of 6 or 5 out of 6 or as many as you can through the cut line. It should be fairly obvious, but it's not to some people. And now that said, some people, I'll tell you this, look purely at cuts. So, because one of the things it shows you when you're building your lineup is how many 9 out of 15 cuts, 15 out of, like if you see a guy who's made 12 out of 12 cuts, their name could be Jeff Seeley, and there are people who are going to click them in their lineup because they make cuts, right? And so that's why, again, a really good example is a guy like Matt Kuchar. He was popular for a long time, not because he would made a bunch of birdies, but because he made a bunch of cuts. So, and I think that's honestly part of what makes. And I'll go back a little bit to Sungjae Im. Sungjae Im does not miss cuts. I mean, I could probably go back and look. The last time he missed a cut, I can't remember. It's part of what makes him so. Rory misses cuts. Hovland misses cuts. A lot of those guys some of those guys, they just miss cuts. Sungjae Im does not miss cuts, which is part of what makes him such a good DraftKings play. Guys, I'm going to go back to this Gary Woodland, Keith Mitchell thing real quick. I think the biggest difference for me between these 2 guys, and it's fairly obvious and straightforward, is putting. So let's talk about putting a little bit here. I look at Mitchell, and in Mitchell's last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 events, he gained strokes putting in 6 of them. That's not bad. In Woodland's last 9 events, he gained strokes putting in 2 of them. And in 2 of them, he lost 7 strokes putting. So Gary Woodland, not a good putter, but if he can putt, that's literally his only thing that holds him back, right? So his short game's not good. His putting can be abysmal, but this is his best putting surface, so he's got that going for him. And if he's even neutral with his putter, Gary Woodland's probably top 10. There you go. So, yeah, there you go. Sungjae Im's last missed cut was the Sony. He has 16 out of 17 cuts made.
That guy's a machine.
Is he? Absolutely. And, I'm curious. Now I'm going to look at Keith Mitchell for a second, just because we're talking about that. How many – because Mitchell doesn't miss a lot of cuts. Mitchell's made 3, 6, 9. He's made 10 of his last 12. So, I'd be surprised. Honestly, I'd be surprised if Keith Mitchell missed the cut. I think he's a really good play. They're both going to be good plays, but honestly, I think Woodland will be more popular. I think Woodland has higher upside and more downside, frankly.
Tyrrell Hatton strokes gained putting. He's just north of a half a stroke gain. He's 25th right now on the PGA Tour. Again, he finished 5th last week at the Byron Nelson. His long iron plays elite. He was 3rd the week before that. I don't know if Oak Hill is like leaning more towards a Euro player or an American player, albeit Hatton's been on the PGA Tour for years. The weather could be a factor, though. I mean, they're saying it's going to be cold. There could be some precipitation Saturday and Friday. Who's not going to be scared of that or worried about putting the beanie on, putting a raincoat on? I'm starting to talk myself into Tyrrell Hatton a good bit.
You're starting to talk me into Tyrrell Hatton. I mean, I'm looking, and honestly, I'm just looking at his tee to green game, right? Listen to these numbers. Tee to green, 8.7 gain, 11.4 gain, 3.6 gain, 8.4 gain, 7.3 gain, 9.5 gain. That's this year. I mean, putting, that's tee to green. Then putting, 2 strokes, 1 stroke, 3 strokes, 3 strokes, lost at Valero, 4 strokes at the Players, 2 strokes at API. I mean, he's playing out of his mind. You're right. I mean, Clint, are we getting you on Tyrrell Hatton yet? You just bought your Tyrrell Hatton ticket?
He's a little volatile to me, personality-wise. I feel like just one little thing could set him off. He could get a raindrop the wrong way, throw his club, and break his putter. So for me personally, that's not somebody that I probably will be on. But I mean, recent form. I mean, he played great golf last week at the Byron Nelson. But I just, in my opinion, I look at experience. I look at level-headed. There's going to be ups and downs. It's a grind of a major. You talk about weather. There's other factors. There's a loaded field. I just think there's a lot of volatility, and there's a lot going on between the ears with him. And so that's just, for me personally, not somebody I get behind very often.
Well, and so let's, a guy, Drew, you mentioned earlier you were on the Masters. I think you mentioned this guy, 90% live wise DJ. And and we're looking at because let's talk about this Tyrrell Hatton, because let's really dig into this, because I'm coming around to this, and then I'm thinking through what his ownership's going to be, and in between, let's just say 8,400 and 9,000, you got Sunjay M, who's going to be popular, you got Jason Day, who's going to be really popular, you got Max Homa, who is always popular, you got Matt Fitzpatrick, who is 8,400, who I think is going to be popular. I don't know who's going to play Hideki, and I don't know who's going to play Tyrrell Hatton. I think more people play Tyrrell Hatton than will play Hideki. Hideki could be an elite leverage play because nobody's going to play him. But I think Hatton will be one of the lower-owned guys in that range. I certainly think Homa will be more popular. But where I'm really wondering is, are people going to look at the DJ Live win from last week and go to DJ, or are people going to stay off him? What do you guys think?
I think kind of like when you go back to the Live, it's almost like an afterthought, I feel like, because it's hard to find, it's hard to watch on TV, it's hard to keep track of what those guys are doing. So I think it's a lot of guys, like, I know guys that are dialed in are going to be on it, but I like Dustin. I mean, the guy you look back, I think I read something this morning in 2013. I know they've done a big renovation, but at the last major there, he was top 10. So, I mean, he's performed well there before. I think he ended up finishing 8th, if I recall that correctly. So, I mean, I like Dustin. He's a guy that could fill it up. He can absolutely bomb the ball, and the putter can get hot every now and then. And so that's a guy that I personally, wouldn't be shying away from.
But hey, Clint, do you like DJ better than Matt Fitzpatrick?
I would probably take DJ over Fitzpatrick.
Drew, what about you?
Yeah, I'd have to go Fitzpatrick on that one. Even going back to last year's U.S. Open at the Country Club, I would feel like course fit relatively similar. And just the handicapping perspective from these live guys, like, I just haven't seen DJ enough. I mean, I know he won last week, and Pearl Jam was playing in the background on the 18th tee or whatever the hell they have going on over there. But I just think guys like Matt Fitzpatrick, who are in the swing of things now, I would lean more towards him than a DJ. One more name I'm gonna throw out though, about Siwoo Kim. He's been in form too now, and he played great last Sunday at the Byron Nelson, finishing second. He had a 7th in the Zurich, which was the team event, but he's been in top 40 for about the past month straight. Played pretty well at the Masters too, 29th. So I don't know.
And Drew, that's a terrific call. And honestly, I hadn't given Siwoo a ton of thought. And you're right. It's second runner-up last week and a 7th 2 weeks ago, 7,100. I mean, man, this is like the zone of death. You got Keith Mitchell, good play. Gary Woodland, good play. Davis Riley's a good player, right? Like, Siwoo is going to be part of the conversation. That just tells me nobody's going to play Harris English.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Jeff, where are you at? I'm shocked you haven't talked about him yet, but Tom Hoagie, $6,900.
Man, right this hurts.
That's your guy.
Hurts me. Hollywood Hoagie is my guy, and this really hurts me because, I mean, I was all in on Hoagie last week, top 40. I mean, that was my biggest bet. He was 40 at the time, but and again, you talk about a long iron player. Tom Hoagie is as good a long iron player as there is. It is him, exactly. Now, the problem with Hoagie is he's like a poor man's Gary Woodland. He really is. Tom Hoagie is a poor man's Gary Woodland. He can't putt. He's a great long iron player, can't putt. I will for sure have some shares of Tom Hoagie. I definitely will. I think he'll be underowned. And I'll tell you a guy, though, right next to him who nobody knows. Nobody knows who Dean Burmeister is. Nobody.
Yeah.
And this guy can bomb it. He can absolutely bomb it. I'm going to have some shares of him. The real question is, how many people are going to play Phil?
I mean, after what he did Sunday at Augusta, PGA Championship just 2 years ago at Kiowa, I don't even know how he played last week in Tulsa at Live.
Well, I think he was. Let me check his list. Are you gonna play? Are you gonna play Phil Clint? I'm gonna look up his list.
If I had, I'm looking at him right now, $7,000. If I had to fill out a spot where I had exactly $7,000 left and didn't really know where to put it, I would consider him because he's a guy that's going to get it around. He's going to play well. The only thing is I could easily see Phil missing the cut.
Yes.
There's so much volatility there that where he could easily be top 5 and he could also miss the cut and finish, in 5 shots off the bottom of the leaderboard. I mean, that's the only thing I would shy away from.
He finished T70. He finished T72 in 2013, 71. Then he fired a 78 on Saturday and a 72 on Sunday.
Well, and guys, he to your point, Clint, Phil's a guy you play, but if you're playing more than one lineup. If you're just playing one lineup, you can't play Phil Mickelson, right? There's a lot of tournaments where you can play 20 lineups. I love the 20 max. You could play Phil in one of those. But here's his live. So he was T46. He lost 7 strokes last week at Tulsa. That's not good. He was 13th in Singapore, which is okay. 11th in Adelaide, and then out of the blue, 2nd in the Masters. He was 41st in Orlando, 30th at Tucson, and 27th at Mayakoba. Before that, boom, 2nd at the Masters.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm with you. If you're playing multiple lineups, if you're in a lot of different pools where you could take some flyers on some guys like that, that's an easy one. But if you're just doing, hey, I'm going to do 1 to 2 lineups, I'd probably shy away from Phil in that aspect because there's a lot of volatility there.
Guys, another guy down the board a little bit here who's interesting, and nobody's talking about this guy. He is a super talented, especially short game, really good short game. Mackenzie Hughes. 14th last week, 29th a few weeks ago, has a top 5 here, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Mackenzie Hughes is only 6,800. And again, you need a guy who can get out of bunkers and make putts. Mackenzie Hughes is super interesting.
Yeah,
he played great golf last week.
He did. But another guy who can absolutely bomb it, Patrick Rogers. He's been pretty good form, has a 10th and a 5th and a top 20. Patrick Rogers is interesting down there. I'll tell you another guy, guys, who just makes cuts, KH freaking Lee.
Yep.
You want a guy who's just he's the poor man's Sanjay M, right? Like he is just a grinder who just makes cuts. Randomly wins the what was the last week? The Byron Nelson back to back. But I mean, KH Lee makes cuts. I don't mind him. And then what are we gonna do with your guy Sepp Straka? Are we gonna play Sepp at all this week? So 6,700 is pretty cheap.
Pretty cheap, but recent form hasn't been what you've come to accept. What you've come to expect with Sepp. Couple missed cuts, 46, 22 going way back a couple of months ago. I'd probably shy away from Sepp, but will I put a first-round leader bet on him? Probably. I mean, he'll be a super bomb play, and the guy can start out with 6-7 birdies in a round, and he's going to be right there.
What about a Mito Pereira? Would he
I was just looking at him too,
around that range? I mean, he could be a guy that could fill it up, kind of bounce back after last year. He's a guy that I could look at the back end.
Yeah. I think he's a terrific play, and I think he'll be popular. But again, you talk about a first round leader type play, right? I think Mito Pereira is a great first round leader type bet. I think he's a really good DF. Listen, I'd play Mito Pereira 7 days a week and twice on Sunday before Phil Mickelson if I'm playing one lineup, right? That goes without saying. Guys, a guy right next to Sepp Straka who nobody's going to play, nobody's going to talk about. A Missouri Tiger here. We got to go with our Tigers. Hayden Buckley has been playing some great golf recently. 43rd, 26th, 5th, and 10th. I mean, I'm going to have some shares of Hayden Buckley for sure. And then Adam Svensson, who's also right in that range, has been playing some good golf lately. He's interesting. And another guy who no one is going to play because he went to live and people just forgot he existed was an elite long iron player, is Brendan Steele. Are you guys interested in any in those 3 guys at all?
It's just like we talk about, Brendan Steele. I haven't been able to see him. Yeah, I don't see him recently. I haven't talked, and so I just haven't seen the recent form leading up into this. So that's just one I probably might shy away from. I don't know about you, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, Steele, he shot 6 under in the first round and lived Tulsa last week. Great long iron play. Seems like he's somewhat in form. Going back to those first-round leader bets, Sepp Straka, 150 to 1 at Bet Online. Hayden Buckley, 125 to 1 at Bet Online for first-round leader bets. Those are fun just to put a little pizza money on. Yeah. And then, hell, if they start off hot, you have some serious action immediately on a Thursday. Yeah, I probably would shy away from Brendan Steele in my DFS lineup. There's just a lot of really, I think 99 out of the top 100 golfers are playing this week, right? The only one that's not is Will Zalatoris because he's injured.
There's you're right, and I think that's a first round leader stab. I think interesting guy. Another guy, a couple of guys down here further down the board, I'm interested in. Nick Hardy basically was tied for the lead a few weeks ago, or actually won. I guess they won a few weeks ago. Decent form before that. Another guy, man, who who can hit the ball, good long iron player. I'm a big fan of. He went to live. No good won't play him. Harold Varner's only 6,600. Harold Varner's a good freaking goal, and he's another guy. You talk about a first round leader. Harold Varner's a guy that can start out 3 under, right? I mean, Harold Varner's, and he can make. He's guys. We talk about. He is the perfect DFS player because he's the guy who will go birdie, 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 double, bogey, birdie, birdie, bogey. I mean, Harold Varner is a great DFS scorer. Like him a lot.
110 always to 1 first round leader.
He was always good to sprinkle a little pizza money on for first round leader.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, is he gonna win? No, because one round he'll shoot a 76. Right, we know that, but he can also shoot a 66, and there's not a lot of guys who can go that low. Nick Taylor, the guy who screwed me on our Hoagie and Harris matchup a few weeks ago. He looks good. He's pretty for 6,500. Adam Shank's been playing some fairly decent golf lately. He's 6,500. There are some guys down here. Ryan Fox can bomb the golf ball.
Yeah,
he can absolutely bomb the golf ball. He's 6,500. Hogard has been really buzzy and is a popular name now. He's 6,500. Guys, there's people down the board here. Jimmy Walker, back from the freaking dead. Jimmy Walker has 2 top 20s that were top 20, 25 or better in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 3 of his last 5 events, Jimmy Walker's finished top 25. Former PGA Championship winner. I mean, like Jimmy Walker, he's interesting, cheap DFS guy. You know who finishes dead last in the model? I hate to say it. Former Georgia Bulldog Kevin Kisner. I'm not playing.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's probably because Kiz can't hit the ball out of his shadow right now.
I like Kisner a lot, but I saw a tweet recently where somebody tweeted back to him after he missed the cut and said something along the lines of, "It's starting to look like a hobby," and I thought that was pretty funny. It was a little ruthless. You know, I can still find humor even though I like the guy.
Damn. Yes, indeed.
All right, guys. Drew, anybody else in this 6K range you're looking at? Are you going to play some Harold Varner in DFS?
Yeah, I just, as we're sitting here, I just put a first round leader bet on HV3. So thank you very much.
How about Hogard? Are you paying attention to him at all? I mean, the guy he's got talent.
No, I mean, yeah, Rasmus would not be on my board right now. Trey Mullinax, JT Poston, Matthew Neesmith. That guy's been playing some super consistent golf lately. He's got a top 5 as well. You know, those are the guys that I would look more so towards recent form out of these players rather than just trying to throw a dart in the 6,000 range.
Well, let me give you a couple. Let me run down Rasmus Hogard's European Tour results. But he is top 22nd, 18th, 27th, 2nd, 17th, 5th, 30th, 8th, 7th, 38th, 20th, 6th, 16th. Wow. I mean, he is a top 20 machine on the European Tour. Now, okay, is the European Tour better than the Korn Ferry? Probably not, right? And so I look at him as kind of a talented Korn Ferry type guy coming in. But he did take 6th at the Punta Cana, last year, and the 18th of Valero. He can bomb the ball. I just think he's a guy. Again, you're talking about DFS. He's going to be 1% up. Yeah. So if you're playing 20 lineups, you plug him in one, you're going to have leverage. What are you going to say, Clint?
I was about to say one name I'm looking at, Maverick McNeely. The guy's an unbelievable putter. I mean, if he gets going with that putter, I mean, he could make some long putts. And that would be one guy I'd kind of look at. He's 6,900. There's another guy, and I have no statistical backup on this guy, but Lee Hodges is a guy who just snuck in. The reason I only know him is there's a friend of mine that plays out of Charleston, the same club Lee plays at a little bit, and they have played a decent amount of golf together. And this guy swears that Lee Hodges is going to win on tour one day. So he's been a guy that I have randomly picked in some back end of the lineups. He makes some cuts. There's a lot of volatility. He would be another guy if I was doing a bunch of different lineups and, you know, just plugging and playing at the back end, not really having a ton more wiggle room. He's one guy I would look at.
I like Hodges. I don't think that's a bad pick at all. Guys, we haven't talked about him. Neither one of these. You mentioned McNeely. Aaron Wise can bomb it. Yeah. Aaron Wise can, and you talk about a guy. Again, like if you're looking at a DFS and you got a choice between Aaron Wise and Maverick McNeely, Aaron Wise is a million times better DFS. McNeely's probably a better bet to make the cut. He's a for sure better bet to make the cut. But which way these guys can finish top 10? Aaron Wise can finish top 10 way ahead of Maverick McNeely. Drew, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. You know, in that kind of same realm, I know it's higher price, but Sahith Theegala, that dude can freaking bomb it. And when he is really good with his short irons, the putts start to fall. So I know it's just a guy we haven't talked about. I'm looking up and down the board again. But those guys who can ship it out there and then just stay in the fight, I mean, that's where you're looking at and finding the great value for sure. And Lee Hodges, Clint, I mean, in Jeff's model, he's right there, and only 6,300 on the DK salary. That's a good find.
Yeah, and another guy who popped really well for me. You guys see my model. We haven't even talked about is Cameron Davis. Cameron Davis, the guy really. I mean, he can bomb it. Good Aussie player. You know, Drew, you mentioned if it gets windy, and we have some challenges with the weather, maybe that's a play. You know, another guy who, for whatever reason, usually shows up, plays well in long courses, kind of like Brian Harmon is Abe Answer. Nobody's going to play Abe Answer. Haven't seen him in forever. You mentioned Patrick Reed. Nobody's going to play Patrick Reed. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go here, but if I'm going, I think, again, my pick to win, we mentioned, is Brooks Koepka. Let's figure out our picks to win here, maybe favorite values, guys. My pick to win is Brooks Koepka. I think my favorite value is I'm going to go with Adam Scott at 7,800. He just grades that really well for me. And then my long bomb, I'll go with you mentioned first round leader. I'm going to go Harold Varner. I like Harold Varner as my bomb. So probably Koepka to win, Scott for my top value, and Varner for my bomb. Clint, who's your pick to win, top value, and bomb?
I mean, we talked about earlier. I see it as, you know, it's Rahm or Scheffler, and it's Rahm for me. I think those are if I got, like you said, gun to your head, who are you picking to win? I'm going to pick John Rahm. The next spot, my value is going to be Cam Young. I mean, like I said, he's just been beaten down the door at majors, and it's going to happen at some point. And I think my long shot, I'm going to stick around and I'm going to play Russell Henley in a variety of ways.
I like it. Drew.
Xander Schauffele, that's kind of my top of the board pick. He's 16-1 right now. My middle pick would be Tyrrell Hatton at 40-1. I've talked myself into him way too much. And then going down the board here, my bomb play, you know, do I go with a live guy? My bomb play, Taylor Gooch.
I like it. I like it.
And I'm not a Taylor Gooch fan, so that should tell you where I'm at.
But guys, one thing I do want to mention when we talk before we wrap up, and then this isn't a plug for DraftKings or anything, but one of the things I think for guys like you who are getting into it, but you know, still just learning DFS, single entries are a great way to start. But weeks like this, or maybe you want to play some more but don't want to play a ton, look at the 3 max and 20 max tournaments they have on DraftKings. You can set by filters and search them up to 20 max. Those are a lot of fun because then you can say, okay, I'm going to play 2 shares of Taylor Gooch, right? And I'm going to just play 1 share of Patrick Reed, 1 share of Phil, mix some of these things in. The challenge with playing the 150s is unless you play 150 lineups, you're going to be behind because guys are using optimizers like I'm going to do this week to build 150 lineups. It's a challenge, but you can hand build 3, 10, or 20 lineups and compete and kind of manage your leverage that way. So certainly look at those. If you're a new DFS player, I recommend starting out with single entries, then go to some 3 maxes and up to the 20 maxes. I think are great tournaments. So guys, thanks for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you. Drew, where we can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm at Drew Butler on Twitter, and then my podcast is at Punt and Pass. It's a college football podcast, but we talk about a ton of different stuff. We're doing an interview series right now, which has been tons of fun, and hope to help Jeff out with some football picks coming up this fall when golf slows down.
I can't wait. Clint, where can we find you, buddy?
You can find me on Twitter. I don't tweet very often. I think it's Boling60. I'm not I don't have a podcast. I don't tweet. I just follow along. So if you want to tweet at me, you can. I probably won't respond.
multiple time co-host on Punt and Pass though, Clint Boling. So don't sell yourself short there, Boling.
There we go.
Yeah, I've filled in on Punt and Pass before, but it's that's always a good time.
Well, guys, we're gonna do this fall and do some football, the DFS this fall. But now we got your beak wet with the golf DFS. We're gonna definitely have to crank this out this fall. So, guys, thanks for joining us again. You can find me at Cutmaker Jeff. You can find the podcast at Cutmaker Pod. There is a link to our Telegram channel there where we send out when we update the website, when all the plays are going out. Send some live plays there. Great way to join the community and check out all the things we do. So thanks again, guys. And again, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here. Make sure you like, subscribe, please. We're going to just getting this thing started. So we'll continue to do these videos as we go and get some traction on YouTube as well. So thanks, everybody. Good luck in your bets this week, and we'll talk with you next week.